Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji, we welcome you to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam study, chapter by chapter. So today we're going to cover chapter 4, second canto, chapter number 4, and the chapter is titled Process of Creation. Just to clarify, in this chapter, we will not be talking about the creation. It will be in the next chapter. But in this chapter, Parikshit Maharaj asked a question about the process of creation. So he asked Shukdev Goswami about the process of creation. And so Srila Prabhupada has titled this chapter as Process of Creation, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has titled this chapter as Offering the Prayers to the Supreme Lord. And we will see. So the first half of the chapter talks about the questions from Parikshit Maharaj, and in the second half, Shukdev Goswami, before he answered the question from Parikshit Maharaj in second chapter, next chapter 2.5, he offers a series of prayers to the Supreme Lord before he even starts speaking about the creation. So this is chapter 2.4. So today we will discuss we'll take one verse number 23, and you all have been reciting this verse regularly. So today we will get to understand and know a bit more about this verse. Okay, we always recite this verse after Mangalacharan, or I recite this verse along with you, seeking the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Utir Mahadbhir Yaima Puro Vibhu Nirmaya Shete Yadamoshu Purusha Bhunte Gunansho Dashasho Dashatmaka Solankashishta Bhagavan Vachamsi Me Solankrashishta Bhagavan Vachamsi Me. Word by word translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhutair, by the elements, Mahadbhi, of material creation, Yah, he who, Ima, all these, Pura, bodies, Vibhu, of the Lord, Nirmaya, for being set up, Shete, lie down, Yat Amusha, one who incarnated, Purusha, Lord Vishnu, Bhunte, causes to be subjected, Gunan, the three modes of nature, Shodasha, in 16 divisions, Shodashatmaka, being the generator of these 16, Sa, he, Alankrashishta, may decorate, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Vachamsi, statements, may mine. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who in his Purusha incarnation causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. So once again in this verse, Shukdev Goswami is praying to the Supreme Lord, that Supreme Lord who is the creator. So in the beginning, what happens is, as we know, as we briefly discussed, but we will discuss later about the creation. Initially, when the Mahat Tattva is there, so the Supreme Lord impregnates that. He enters into that Mahat Tattva, into the universe himself. And before entering into that, so it's called he impregnates. So he creates, or he, all the, so the Mahat Tattva, basically, which are the 5 elements, Bhumir, Apo, Anal, Vayu, and Kham. Yeah? Earth, water, fire, ether, and air. So these 5 gross elements. So that is all together in the Mahat Tattva. So the Supreme Lord, he enlivens that. He enlivens that whole Mahat Tattva, and then the various bodies get created, like we are all living entities. So think of it like a human body. In a human body, there can be many, like we have various senses, but they are all independent until there is that supreme, when we say the soul is inside the body, as long as the soul is there, so they are all connected. All these various senses, the sense objects, they're all connected. But the moment soul leaves, so it just becomes a dead body. So that Supreme Lord who enlivens, so that's what Sukdev Goswami is saying, who enlivens, who enters Nirmaya Yashete, who lie down inside the ocean and who also lies down, is inside us as Paramatma, who, and that Paramatma, and then there is mention of 16 divisions here. Yeah. So which Prabhupada mentions in the purport, those 16 divisions, it starts with the 5 gross elements, then 5 working senses, and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. 5 gross elements we all know, then the 5 knowledge acquiring senses are smell, see, touch, tongue, and hear. So these are the knowledge acquiring senses. And 5 karmendriya, working senses, hand, leg, regeneration, evacuation, and walking. Yeah, walking. And so 5 karmendriya, 5 gyanendriya, 5 gross bodies, and then there is mind. So mind is between working senses and the knowledge acquiring senses. So our working senses operate as per direction from the mind. Yeah. So these knowledge acquiring senses, they instruct, and then, or the mind controls, and then our working senses operate. So this is how roughly these 16 divisions. So here Shukdev Goswami is saying, may that Supreme Lord who enlivens this, who is incarnated as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Shirodakshaya Vishnu, and who is as a Paramatma inside our bodies, may that Supreme Lord decorate my statements. Yeah, Solanka Srashta Bhagwan Vachamsi. So whatever I'm going to speak, may that Supreme Lord decorate my statements. Because if I'm trying to really glorify the Supreme Lord, without his mercy, I cannot glorify the Supreme Lord. And as much as it applies to the hearer, it also applies to the listener also. So the listener's senses have also, or his knowledge acquiring senses should also be active, because once again, so there is enlivened because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead only. So he is the Sarva Karan Karanam. So we seek his mercy so that when we speak, and also we seek his mercy so that we can grasp. Yeah. So that is the intention. So I hope, because we always recite this shlok at the end of Mangalacharan, so that may that Supreme Lord decorate our statements. Yeah. So now let's read the purport. I hope now we can better relate to this verse. So I just elaborated a bit on this, but let's read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. As a fully dependent devotee, Shukdev Goswami, unlike a mundane man who is proud of his own capability, invokes the pleasure of the personality of Godhead so that his statements may be successful and be appreciated by the hearers. The devotee always thinks of himself as instrumental for anything successfully carried out, and he declines to take credit for anything done by himself. The godless atheist wants to take all credit for activities, not knowing that even a blade of grass cannot move without the sanction of the Supreme Spirit, the personality of Godhead. Shukdev Goswami therefore wants to move by the direction of the Supreme Lord, who inspired Brahma to speak the Vedic wisdom. The truths described in the Vedic literatures are not theories of mundane imagination, nor are they fictitious, as the less intelligent class of men sometimes think. The Vedic truths are all perfect descriptions of the factual truth without any mistake or illusion. And Shukdev Goswami wants to present the truths of creation not as a metaphysical theory of philosophical speculation, but as the actual facts and figures of the subject, since he would be dictated by the Lord exactly in the same manner as Brahmaji was inspired. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 15.15, the Lord is himself the father of Vedanta knowledge, and it is he only who knows the factual purport of Vedanta philosophy. So there is no greater truth than the principles of religion mentioned in the Vedas. Such Vedic knowledge or religion is disseminated by authorities like Shukdev Goswami because he is a humble devotional servitor of the Lord who has no desire to become a self-appointed interpreter without authority. That is a way of explaining the Vedic knowledge, technically known as the Parampara system or descending process. The intelligent man can see without mistake that any material creation, whether one's own body or a fruit or flower, cannot beautifully grow up without the spiritual touch. The greatest intelligent man of the world or the greatest man of science can present everything very beautifully only insofar as the spirit life is there, or in so much as the spirit touch is there. Therefore, the source of all truths is the Supreme Spirit and not gross matter, as wrongly conceived by the gross materialist. We get information from the Vedic literature that the Lord himself first entered the vacuum of the material universe, and thus all things gradually developed one after another. Similarly, the Lord is situated as localized Paramatma in every individual being, hence everything is done by him very beautifully. The 16 principal creative elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, and the 11 sense organs, first developed from the Lord himself and were thereby shared by the living entities. Yeah? Thus, the material elements were created for the enjoyment of the living entities. The beautiful arrangement behind all material manifestations is therefore made possible by the energy of the Lord, and the individual living entity can only pray to the Lord to understand it properly. Since the Lord is the supreme entity, different from Shukdev Goswami, the prayer can be offered to him. The Lord helps the living entity to enjoy material creation, but he is aloof from such false enjoyment. Shukdev prays for the mercy of the Lord, not only for being helped personally in presenting the truth, but also for helping others to whom he would like to speak. Srila Bhaktivedanta Purports ki Jai. Okay. Let's do Mangalachan Prabhuji Mataji. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Nama Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamlam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Savadhetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dīnabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Shri Radha Kanta Namastute, Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi, Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye, Vancha Kalpatarobhyascha, Kripa Sindhubha Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhuter mahadbhir yayma puro vibho nirmayashete yadamosha purusha bhunte gunansho dasho dashatmaka solank srishta bhagavan vachamsi me. Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanaagatam Katha Amritam Satat Pibatam Bhakti Vedanta Marga Pantanam Sarvaloka Rishi Dev Janma Prasannam Sarvaloka Rishi Dev Janma Prasannam. Hare Krishna. So this is, the chapter is titled Process of Creation. It is a small chapter. There are 25 verses in this chapter. And like I said, in this, though the chapter is titled Process of Creation, but we don't talk about process of creation in this chapter. It will be in the next chapter. So far, in the last 4 chapters, so the first chapter we spoke about for people who still have desires, and Shukdev Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj and he described how to concentrate, how to apply your concentration on the Sthule Rupe Bhagavate, yeah, this material world. So thinking of, for example, trees to be the hairs on the part of the body. So people who have material desires and who are following the path of Ashtanga Yoga. And he concluded that chapter saying that the bhakti, tasmat bharat sarvatma bhagwan ishvaro hari shrotavya kirtitavyasya ichcheta abhyam. So he concluded that you should always remember, glorify and hear about the glories of the Supreme Lord if you are desiring for abhay, fearlessness. So that's where that chapter concludes. Then in the next chapter he spoke about the heavenly planets, people who desire to go to heavenly planets, and how the Kram Mukti and the Sadhya Mukti. But then also he concluded that chapter again by saying Tasmat Tasmat Rajan. So this time he said Hari Sarvatra Sarvada. Once again, the same concept that we should remember, glorify, and hear the glories of the Supreme Lord. And in the third chapter that we discussed last week, then Shukdev Goswami spoke about the demigod worship, and how the worship of the Supreme Lord is superior to the demigod worship and everything else. Yeah. So now in today's chapter, the very first, and then towards the end of the third chapter, or when Shukdev Goswami had spoken about this, he just concluded that section, and he says, Etavan eva yaje tam iha nishreyasyo udaya. And then Achalo Bhagavati achalo bhavo yad bhagavata sangata. Yeah. So he concluded that saying that etvan eva yajatam iha. So for all of those people who are performing these various kind of worships, who are worshipping demigods, who are trying to go to heavenly planets, who are looking for this mukti or this liberation, he says, for them, ni shreyaso udaya, their greatest fortune arises when Bhagavati achalo bhavo, when they develop unflinching faith into the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how they develop that unflinching faith, he says, Yad Bhagavata Sangata, in the association of devotees, when they develop that bhav, that is the greatest fortune for those, for all of these. And then Shaunakadi Rishi thought maybe that's about it, that's the end. But so then they further motivated Sut Goswami that please speak more, please tell us about what else was discussed. And he says, when these two Bhagavatas, and they glorify Parikshit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami, they said when those two had met, yeah, then they must have, yeah, Katha Hari Katha Darko, right? When they were discussing that Katha, or their discussion would have given rise to Hari Katha, right? Because when two devotees are meeting, they will definitely Dhruvam, yeah, Sadasi Dhruvam, in that assembly, they must have discussed the Hari Katha. Please describe to us more and more. And like this, when they motivated Sut Goswami, then Sut Goswami starts speaking now. Yeah. So let me share my screen. So the process of creation, Sut Goswami describes what happens next. So there are three sections in this chapter, Prabhuji Mataji. In the first section, Sut Goswami will describe what happens next. The second section captures the questions by Parikshit Maharaj. And in the third section, Shukdev Goswami starts speaking. And like I said, in this chapter, there are a series of prayers before he starts speaking. He offers these prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead so that he can speak. Basically, he's trying to repeat what his predecessors had spoken. So focus. So Parikshit Maharaj concentrates his mind on Krishna. So now that Shaunakadi Rishi have motivated Sut Goswami, so they told Sut Goswami, they Athabhideha Gamanonukulam Prabhasase Bhagavata Pradhana Yad Ahavayas Kiryatma Vidya Visharado Nripatim Sadhu Prishta. So they said to him that, oh, Sut Goswami, Athabhidehang Manonukulam, whatever is in your mind, mano anukul, yeah, जो भी आपके मन के अनुकूल है, please describe to us, yeah. And Prabhasha se Bhagavata Pradhana, you are the topmost Bhagavat, and whatever you're going to speak about the Supreme Lord. Please speak to us. Yad ah, whatever was spoken by Vaiyasakir, Shukdev Goswami, who is son of Vyasadev, Atma Vidya Visharad, because he is the Visharad, he is the expert in the knowledge of Atma Vidya. Yeah, Adhyatma, because he is the topmost, and whatever question was asked by Nirpatim, by king, please tell us. So now Sut Goswami starts speaking and he says, focus. Parikshit concentrates his mind. So he says, Vaiyasakir iti vachas. Vaiyasakir iti vachas tattva nishchayam atmana. Yeah. After Shukdev Goswami had spoken this truth, this tattva, yeah, about Atma, about the soul, about the, glorify the Supreme Lord, hear about the Supreme Lord, and remember the Supreme Lord. After Vaiyasakir iti vachas, Yeah, tattva nishchayam atmana. Yeah, tattva jab nishchit kar diya Vyasdev, Shukdev ji ne bol karke, after Shukdev ji spoke, and then he says, Parikshit Maharaj, then he had a full focus. Yeah, he developed Krishna Matir. Yeah, Krishna Matim. He focused his mind unto the Supreme Lord Krishna. Uttare, Parikshit Maharaj, and he's addressing who is son of Uttara. So now Acharya said the reason he's making reference to Uttara, he could have called him Parikshit or king, but he's specifically making a mention of son of Uttara. Because remember that pastime when Ashwathama had released Brahmastra. So then Parikshit Maharaj was already in the womb of his mother. Then Mother Uttara had run to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Right? So that is why he's making a reference to Uttara, who had Parikshit Maharaj in her womb at the time. So he was a great devotee from the childhood. Even before he came out of the womb of his mother, he had already got a darshan of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So he says, Upadharya Krishna. Yeah. So he focused his mind on the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Uttareya, who is son of Mother Uttara. Yeah. Satim Vyadhat. So he's called a Satim or a Sattvic, person, Parikshit Maharaj. So he focused, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Then the next step. So this is the process, Prabhuji Mataji. Like I said earlier also, this is the process we can also follow. So this is not this is a good study, but not just academic, how we can practically apply in our lives as well. So after hearing what Parikshit Maharaj had heard, and we all have heard that as well through this process of studying these chapters, right? So he has given a solution for all the demigod worshippers who wants to go to heavenly planets, who want Sadhya Mukti, who want impersonal liberation, whoever wants, for them the best solution. And it is not just Shukdev Goswami. This he has already referred that Brahmaji himself, Bhagavan Brahma, yeah, Kartasya Nayen, he himself studied, yeah, Trin Anvikshaya, 3 times he studied the Vedas himself. Yeah, and that then it was his conclusion. Vasudeve Bhagavati. Yeah, to the Supreme, unto the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, we should develop that rati, we should develop that affection. So this applies to us also. That's what I'm saying. After hearing all of that, after understanding the tattva from what Shukdev Goswami had spoken, Parikshit Maharaj concentrates his mind on Krishna. And now as a next step, he's going for the detachment. First, we get our focus. And last time we discussed the 9 stages of devotional service. So that also applies here. So it all starts with Shraddha. So Parikshit Maharaj, he had full faith in this process. And that is why he welcomed Shukdev Goswami and he heard from him. So Shraddha is very important. And Mahaprabhu defines Shraddha. Yeah, Shraddha Shabde Vishwase Kahe Sudrid Nishchaya. Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krata. So this is Shraddha, full faith. Yeah, because if we don't do anything with Shraddha, then it doesn't give us any result at all. Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7 chapter 28, Lord Krishna tells Arjun, Ashraddheya Hutam Dattam Tapas Tapta Kritam Chayat. Yeah. Ashraddheya Hutam Dattat Tapas Taptam Kritam Chayat Asad iti Uchyate. Yeah. So this is called Asad. Yeah. Nacha tat pretya na iha. Yeah. Asad iti asad iti uchyate partha nacha tat pretya ne iha. Yeah. So what Lord Krishna telling Parikshit Maharaj, Arjun there is in battlefield, that if anything done with ashraddha, even if sometime you go to the temple for the sake of going, it's okay. It is the beginning. But the whole point is, Prabhuji Mataji, of this process, we have to develop the Shraddha. If we don't have the faith, right? Without faith, Krishna is saying to Arjun, what happens? Ashraddheya Hutam Dattam. Hutam is if you're doing any yagna, home. Dattam, if you are giving any charity, right? Hutam Dattam Tapas Taptam, right? If you are performing any austerity without any Shraddha, right? Then, or if you are doing any other karma, any other activity without Shraddha, Asad iti, it is called Asad, right? It is not, it doesn't give any benefit. That's what Krishna is telling to Arjun. And Nacha tat pretya ne iha. Pretya means when you die and when you become a pret. Sometimes we say if you do charity in this life, you're going to get benefit in the next life. So Krishna is telling, Nacha tat pretya, in your next life, neh ihe, not in this life as well as in the next life, it doesn't give us any fruit. Asad, it is called Asad. So Shraddha is very important, Prabhuji Mataji. This is the beginning. Adav Shraddha. That is why Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Rupa Goswami says it begins with the Shraddha. So Shraddha is very, so Parikshit Maharaj had full Shraddha and he concentrated his mind and now he detached himself. So here now Sud Goswami is telling Shaunakadi Rishi, first Shukdev Goswami is not speaking as it, so he's just describing what happens next. So he says, Atma Dara Suta Gara, yeah, Pashu Dravina Bandhushu, yeah, and Atma Dara Suta Agara Pashu Dravina Bandhushu. So he, Dara as in his wife, Suta as in his sons or descendants, right? Pashu, animals, horse, elephant, the army, Dravina as in the money, right? And Pashu, money. So all of that, he detached himself completely. Rajye cha, yeah, even the kingdom, who was, it is called, he had Ek Chhatra Rajya across Nishkantak Rajya. There was no problem at all whatsoever, right? So he really, he left all of that behind. Rajye cha, and then he says Nityam, because he was always operating in that kingdom. He was always associating with them. Nityam, yeah, Virudham Mamta Jahau. Jahau as in, and as in he relinquished, and Mamta as in the attachment. So he relinquished that attachment to all of these. So he detached himself. Now you might ask that, well, was he actually attached earlier on? Yeah, in the eye of public, a king, as a king, he had to be attached. He had to perform. He had to take care of those things. If you take the example of Bharat Maharaj, when Bharat Maharaj was a king, so as a king, he was performing all the duties. But in the next life, when he was born as Jad Bharat, he did not perform any duty at all. His parents were telling him to study. No, he won't study because he was clear in his mind. So he was already detached from the beginning. But here, Parikshit Maharaj, internally, he was already detached, but externally, he detached himself. He had already appointed his son, Janmeja, as the future king when he decided to go and sit on the bank of Ganges to fast unto death. Yeah? So he focused, completely focused, then he detached himself. And then the next step he did is renunciation. Yeah, Parikshit Maharaj renounced everything, including dharma, arth, and kam. Yeah, so it says samstham vignaya sanyasya. Samstham as in now that he knew that his death is imminent in next 7 days. Samstham vignaya as in knowing his death in next 7 days. Sanyasya, he completely renounced. Yeah, he detached himself, but now he renounced from what? Trai vargikam karm chayat. So those three vargikam is dharma, arth, and kam. As a king, he had to perform these tasks. He had to be involved in these tasks. Amrish Maharaj, he wasn't performing the yagna as a king. Sometimes they appoint some priest to perform the yagna ceremony. So he had all of these things going in parallel. But in his own mind, he was always performing the devotional service to the Supreme Lord. But now he's really renouncing all of that also, dharma, arth, and kam, and karm chayat, and everything else. And then what did he do? Vasudeve Bhagavati Atma Bhavam Dridam Gata. Right? Now he completely fixed his natural love for Krishna, Vasudeva Bhagavati, and then he started inquiring from Shukdev Goswami. Yeah. So the process is he focused on his mind on Supreme Lord Shri Krishna after understanding the tattva spoken by Shukdev Goswami, and that we all have heard through the previous chapters. Then he detached himself, yeah, from Atma, Dara, Suta, Pashu, Dravina, Rajya, everything he detached, and then he also renounced everything else, also performing these dharma, artha, and kama activities, and in his natural love for Sri Krishna. Now he starts inquiring from Shukdev Goswami. So let's look at that. Now Parikshit Maharaj tells Shukdev Goswami that Samichinam Vacho Brahman. O Brahman, O Shukdev Goswami, O knower of the Brahman, Samichinam Vacho. Your words are true, and they are also very powerful. They are also very perfect. Right? Whatever you are speaking, this is helping me. Tamo vishiryate mayam. As I'm hearing these words from you, my tamo, my ignorance, vishiryate, my ignorance is being destroyed. Yeah. So he is first glorifying, right? So this is how we ask a question. Before he asks a question, he is glorifying. He is saying that Samichinam Vacho Brahman Sarvagna Tava Anagha. Sarvagna, you are knower of everything and you are sinless. And as you are speaking, what is happening? Tamo vishiryate mayam hare kathyatah katham. As you are speaking Hari Katha, as you are describing the glories of the Supreme Lord to me, my ignorance is slowly diminishing, is going away. Yeah. So now as a next step, he says, I would like to know, how does the Lord create, maintain, and destroy this universe? So there are two energies of the Supreme Lord, the external energy, which is called Maya Shakti, and the internal energy, which is called Chitta Shakti. So the very first question he is asking, how does the Lord create, maintain, and destroy this universe? Then how does he enact primary and secondary creations? Yeah. So he would first like to understand the external energy. He's not straight away jumping to the 10th canto. He's not straight away asking about the Ras Leela questions and all of them. He first wants to, and also our Acharya says the process is first to understand the greatness of somebody. So in the eye of the people, this is the greatness of the Supreme Lord. How does he create? Yeah. Something to think about. We don't think very often, but we take things for granted. But think about it, how this whole universe is created, how everything is hanging together, how is it being maintained? Yeah. I mean, take your personal lives. There is a slight disruption in the train mechanism, our lives get disturbed so much, right? But think of the nature, how this nature is holding itself together, who created. Yeah. Other day only, I was having a nice conversation with a young schoolboy, and he had a question. He was just saying that we were talking about this this reservation, this quota system for some of the underprivileged society in different countries. Even here in this country, we have some sort of priority given to some people who belong to certain generation. But the point that we were talking is, now let's say, for example, we say that Aboriginal community here, they say that for them there is a certain arrangement so that they get some head start. But then the question that we came to conclusion was, or the point was, that somebody who is 20-year-old now, how could he be part of what happened 300 years ago? Something to think about. Yes, I'm part of that community, or back in India, we have this system of reservation, right? But somebody who is born 20 years ago, how could he be part of something that happened 300 years ago, or 500 years ago, thousands of years ago, right? So the conclusion that we came to was, then that should lead to the next question: why am I born? Where am I born? The birth, and that's where this process of the adhyatma yoga, That's where the process of creation, maintenance. So that's where we need to start asking. We should ask questions, but we are so much limited to the current environment. We just think, oh, this is it. This is the end of it. But what was before and what is after? We are here. I mean, we could be gone in next 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. Yeah. I once read behind the truck, there was a very nice, in India, behind the vehicles they ride. So behind the trucks, this person, I mean, there was a line, it says कि मृत्यु तो निश्चित है, but प्रश्न ये है कि मृत्यु के बाद हम कहाँ जाएंगे? Death is sure, but the question is, where will I go after the death? Yeah. So these things should invoke some questions, right? So here now Parikshit Maharaj says to Shukdev Goswami, yes, I want to hear. So what did he say? Shrotavya kirtitavyasya smartavyasya. Shrotavya, hear the glories of the Supreme Lord. So hearing about the creation process, that is also glories of the Supreme Lord. How does he maintain? How does he destroy? So he wants to hear that glories, but initially he wants to hear about the external Shakti, and then in the future chapters we will discuss about the past times, about the Leela. So if you want to enter into the past times, you first should be able to appreciate that Supreme Person. Otherwise, if you enter the Leela immaturely, then we will lose that, we will lose that level of connection, that level of respect, the reverence and the love. Yeah? So that's how Prabhupada used to say, God is not cheap. So we have to appreciate that. So Parikshit Maharaj starts with these questions. So how does the Lord create? So he says, Bhuya eva vivitsami Bhagavan Atma Mayaya Yathedam Srijate Vishwam Durvibhavyam Adhishwarai. So I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead by his personal energies creates. I have highlighted these questions. Please remember these questions, because these questions will get answered in the following chapters. So principally the creation, the maintenance, and the winding up, or annihilations, if you call. And then for creation, how does he expand himself? So these are the principally 4 questions, if you like. Yeah. So he's asking, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. Durvibhavyam Adhishware, the great demigods, Brahmaji, Indra, even they cannot. Once even Lord Shiva, in Bhagavatam we will study, Lord Shiva fought with Krishna. He had a fight, Lord Shiva, for one of his devotees who was grandson of Bali Maharaj, I think. Yeah, but we will discuss in the future chapters. So they get bewildered with the Lord's Maya. Yeah? Hari Maya Balvanta Bhavani Jehina Moh Kavan Asagyani. Yeah? This is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva speaking to Mother Parvati in Ramayana. Bhagwan Shiv Mother Parvati ko keh rahe hain कि Hari Maya Balvant Bhavani. O Bhavani, Bhagwan Hari ki Maya itni balvant hai, जे ही न मोह कवन अस ज्ञानी. ऐसा कोई ज्ञानी नहीं है. There is no one in this universe or anywhere who is not bewildered by that Maya. So the only way to cross over that Maya is, Mamev ye prapadyante Maya metam tarantite. Lord Krishna answers in Bhagavad Gita, whoever surrenders to me, they will be able to cross over my Maya. Yeah, Bhagwan Atma Maya. So this is the first question that he asked. How does he create these phenomenal universes? And it will be answered in the following chapters. And then the next verse he is asking, Yatha Gopa Yati Vibhur Yatha Sanyachate Punah Yam Yam Shaktin Upashritya Puru Shakti Parah Puman Atmanam Kridayan Kridan Karoti Vikaroti Cha. Kindly describe the Supreme Lord who is all powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions. Now the highlighted point is maintaining and again winding up. Yeah. How does he maintain and how does he again wind up the phenomenal world in the supporting spirit of a player? Yeah. Just imagine, take an analogy. Let's say Earth. There is a person who's making the pots. He's making the pots from the earth. Yeah. So he takes earth and then mud, you call it. Yeah. So he mixes up, right? He starts making the pot. Now that tool that he's using, it is also made up from the earth. I mean, some elements mixed up, but they have all come from the earth. So the person who is making the pot is made from the earth. The tool that he is using, that is also made from the earth. The person himself who is making that pot, he has also come from the earth. Panch Mahabhut, I mean, we can say there are other elements also, but he is again, in the end, he is also going to be dissolved into the Mahat Tattva. And mind you, when he's making the pot, he's also using water, he's also using fire to an extent. So there are these various elements coming in. Yeah. And then when the pot breaks, when it is of no good, you throw it somewhere and then it again gets mixed into the earth. Yeah. So it creates from the same. So this is like a child's play, you can say. You know, like you go on beach and you make that sand castle and then you just break it. So how? Atmanam kridayan kridan karoti vikroti chay. He creates and then vikroti, and then he also breaks it. How does he do that? Yeah, very, very something to think about. And then we get to understand the greatness of the person. We make a small house. I know, I mean, if some of you have been involved in building your house or something, or even doing a little maintenance in your house, you call a plumber and then you hear, I've heard, we talk among ourselves, oh, Prabhuji, I had to call an electrician. It was such a headache. I had to call a plumber. It was such a headache. But appreciate the greatness of the Supreme Lord. Everything is so nicely connected. Water is arranged, trees are arranged, the air is coming. Everything is so nicely arranged. So that arrangement is made. Yeah. And then the third question he's asking is, Yatha gunans prakriter yugapatah kramsho apiva Bibharti bhuri shastveka kurvan karmani janmani. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Yeah. Yeah. Ekla Ishwara Krishna Ara Sabha Bhritte. Krishna's Kaviraj, right? Ekla Ishwara Krishna. Only Krishna is only one Ishwar controller. Everyone else is Bhritte. Everyone else is servant of Krishna. Now again the question, whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature or simultaneously expands in many forms or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. Yeah. Now, Supreme Lord being one, again, let's just think about it. Whether it is him who accept all the material modes, or he has various expansions of himself who represent different modes, right? So he wants to understand that as well, the expansions. So like I said, 4 principal questions: the creation, the maintenance, and the winding up. And for these 3 activities, whether he acts alone himself or whether he simultaneously expands in many forms or expand consecutively to direct the modes of nature. So he wants to know that as well. And then Parikshit Maharaj also says, Durvibhavyam Adhishwari. He says that no one else knows about this. And then he tells Shukdev Goswami, Harir Adbhut Karmana, that Bhagwan Hari who does wonderful pastimes, right? But nobody can understand them. But I want to know from you. So here a question comes that if nobody can understand, then why are you asking me? So here Parikshit Maharaj has already told him, like I said in the beginning, he said, you know everything and you are Anagar, right? You are the sinless one. So you will be able to explain it to me. So this is how Prabhuji, he asked these questions. Okay? Now, Shukdev Goswami now starts, before he starts answering his questions, he offers prayers to the Lord. And like I said, there are series of prayers that he's offering in this. So the very first Sut Goswami, when Shukdev Goswami, Sut Goswami now tells Shaunaka Rishi, when Shukdev Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy of the personality of Godhead, he then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to reply properly, he spoke thus. So he starts speaking. So in the verse number 11, he prays to the Supreme Lord. He says, Nama Parasmai Purushaya Bhuyase Sad-udbhavasthan nirodha-leelaya. Sad-udbhavasthan nirodha-leelaya. Grahit shakti tritayaya dehina. Grahit shakti tritayaya dehina. Antarbhavaya nupalakshavartmane. Antarbhavaya nupalakshavartmane. So before he speaks anything, he prays to the Supreme Lord. He says, Namo Namah Parasmai, to that topmost, Para and Parasmai, to that Supreme Lord, yeah, Purushaya Bhuyase, yeah, who is the Supreme Lord. I pay my obeisances to that Supreme Lord. And what does he do? Sada Udbhav Sthan Nirodh Leelaya. Udbhav is the generation, Sthan is maintenance, and Nirodh. Right? So he is that Supreme Lord who takes three forms: Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Yeah? Brahma for creation, yeah? Vishnu for maintenance, and Mahesh for destruction, for winding up. Yeah? He accepts those different forms. Yeah? Shakti, yeah, Grahita Shakti Tritaya. He also expands into these three modes, that Supreme Lord, yeah, and who also enter into everybody's heart, Antar, yeah, who is inside every who also enters inside every living entity, but uplakshaya, who can't be seen, who cannot be conceived by people who are materially motivated. They cannot conceive that idea of that the Supreme Lord is inside, who is in the form of Paramatma. So that Supreme Lord, Shukdev Goswami says, I offer my prayers to that Supreme Lord who takes these three forms, right, for creation, maintenance, and winding up, who accepts these three modes of nature, and who also enters into the every living entity, who is Bhuyase, who is Anant, right, whose leelas are Anant, whose qualities are Anant, which cannot be counted. Yeah, to that Supreme Lord, I am paying my obeisances. So he offers his obeisances to that. Then in the next verse, he says, once again, Bhuyo Namah. See, once again, he's saying, I pay my obeisances to that Supreme Lord who is the protector of Sattvatam Pati. Yeah, who protects the people who are on the who are his devotees, or who are in the mode of goodness, sattvic, right? I pay my obeisances to him. I also, that Supreme Lord who stops people who are wrongdoers, who are non-devotees, or people who are of the demonic mentality, who also stops their advances when they are advancing too much. He stops them also. But at the same time, he does not do any differentiation. For him, everybody is equal. One is progressing on this mark, one is progressing. If somebody is progressing on the sattvic mark, they get their destination. If somebody is progressing on the demoniac mark too much, then he stops them. But for him, there is no difference. So I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Lord. Once again, Bhuyo Namah. So he offers that obeisances again. Then in the next verse, he again says that I Namo Namaste. That once again, I mean, there are these various different prayers. Like I said, I mean, we won't go through all of them. You can read them at your own pace. I will try to cover just few important ones of the specific ones. They're all important, by the way. But the point that I'm trying to highlight is, even before he speaks, he keeps offering his obeisances. He's asking for the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So he offers his prayers once again to the Supreme Lord. Then in another set of verses, he says, Tasmai Namo. Yeah, Tasmai Namo, Tasmai Bhuri Shravase Nama. Yeah, yeah. That who is to be heard, right? Who is to be heard? Shravase Nama. I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Lord again. So 3 times in the next verses, yeah, that Supreme Lord who gets pleased by people who are performing these 6 activities, who are looking at his Archa Vigraha, people who are participating in his Kirtan, people who are glorifying their Supreme Lord, people who are performing Archa Vigraha, right? So by performing these activities, who can reach to his abode? I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Lord again. And then he says, I also offer my obeisances to that Supreme Lord. Then he mentions the various races, Kirat, Hunandra, yeah, these various I would say tribes, who are involved in killing and all kind of those prohibited activities. But he says that even those tribes, when they take the shelter at the lotus feet of a devotee, and that devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Yeah, please remember this change. So he's saying that these various tribes who have taken shelter at the lotus feet of devotee, and that devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Yes, tasmai prabha vishnave nama, right? That all powerful Vishnu, right? I pay my obeisances to that supremely powerful Vishnu. Yeah. And then he says, I also offer my obeisances to the Supreme Lord who imparted this knowledge of Vedas to Brahmaji, right? I pay my obeisances to him. So like this, he paid. And then he says that I also pay my obeisances to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, who can provide the liberation. Same Mukundo Bhagwan Prasidata. Now he was, so far he was offering his obeisances. Now he says, may that Supreme Lord be pleased with me. Yeah, Same Mukundo Bhagwan Prasidatam. May that Supreme Lord who can give the liberation, Mukunda, Muktim Dadati Iti Mukunda. May that Supreme Lord be pleased with me. Yeah, so he's offering his obeisances to him. And then he also says that Supreme Lord who is the shelter of all the rishis, yeah, Rishinam Rishabha Prasidatam, right? May, who is the topmost among the rishis, may that Supreme Lord be pleased with me. And then after offering all of these prayers, then he comes to today's verse, and then he says, what is verse number 23? Bhuter mahadbhir yaima puro vibho nirmayashete yadamosha purusha bhunte gunan shodashatmakam solank srashta bhagavan vachansi me. So like this, Prabhuji, Mataji, he started offering this glorification of the Supreme Lord, and this is verse number 23. So from 11 to 23, he has been glorifying the Supreme Lord. We've already discussed about verse number 23, that basically those 16 rasas, right? So 16 various rasas, or for example, if somebody is trying to speak, or if I'm trying to speak about the madhurya ras about the Supreme Lord, so unless I get mercy of the Supreme Lord to be able to describe that madhurya leela of the Supreme Lord, if I'm trying to speak about the vir ras, the chivalry, Bhishma Pitama and Lord Krishna, without his mercy I cannot speak, right? But for me to be able to speak, I have to have, and for like Parikshit Maharaj, it applies to both the hearer and the speaker. So without the mercy of the Supreme Lord, we cannot do that, right? So Now, like this, Shukdev Goswami prayed for the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And then finally, he concludes by saying, so this is the last verse. And then he says, my dear King, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject, and it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. He says, Etad eva atmabhu. Atmabhu is self-born or the firstborn. Brahmaji, who was Brahmaji? Etad eva atmabhu Naradaya viprichate. When Naradji had asked Brahmaji at that time, and then he says, Ved garbho bhedhad sakshad. Yeah, exactly the Ved garbho bhedad, who was impregnated with the Vedic knowledge from his very birth. Ved garbho bhedhad sakshad. Sakshad is directly spoken by the Lord. And then he says, Harer Atmana. Yeah. Yad aha Harer Atmana. Harer Atmana is Hari's own son. Because Brahmaji is Supreme Lord's his own son. So basically, Shukdev Goswami concludes this chapter by saying that, my dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, when he was questioned by Narad, exactly. So Naradji had asked similar question to Brahmaji. So this is the parampara system, Prabhuji Mataji. Shukdev Goswami is not going to speak anything on his own. So Shukdev Goswami glorifies the Supreme Lord, and he just wants to repeat what was spoken by Brahmaji to Naradji. And Brahmaji heard that from the Supreme Lord directly. And then Brahmaji passed it on to the Naradji. So he is saying, once that was asked, a question was asked by Naradji to Brahmaji, and then Brahmena Narado, Brahma spoke to Naradji. And then actually Naradji had spoken to Vyasdevji. So he is exactly going to narrate that conversation between Brahma and Narad about the process of creation, which is captured in the next chapter, 5th chapter. So that concludes this discussion on 2.4, 4th chapter, the process of creation. Now, also yesterday, Prabhuji Mataji, we had the disappearance of Loknath Goswami. I thought we will spend about 10 minutes. We have another 10 minutes remaining, so we will spend 10 minutes and we will discuss, or we will glorify Loknath Goswami. So Loknath Goswami, as most of you know, if you don't know, he is the Guru Maharaj of Narottam Das Thakur. And Narottam Das Thakur in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Prabhuji Mataji, most of the bhajans that we sing, they are written by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur or Narottam Das Thakur, right? So I'm just trying to get you so that we can appreciate the greatness of Loknath Goswami, how great he was. So it is said that Loknath Goswami, he was born in a he was born in a Brahmin family, and he decided to leave home at a very early age. And as he left his parents and mother behind, he left. Then he had already heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is here. So and he's the Supreme Lord himself. So Loknath Goswami, he went to take darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is said that he went there to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just 2 to 3 days before Mahaprabhu was about to take sannyas. And as Loknath Goswami, he went to take darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He got the darshan of Mahaprabhu, and then actually I can stop the sharing the screen. Yeah. And as he went to take the darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then as he paid his obeisances, but then he realized that Mahaprabhu is going to take sannyas. So Loknath Swami, he still had his head down and he was crying. He was crying, and then somehow he felt that somebody is lifting him up. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lifted him up, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, don't worry, we will meet again. I will see you again. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him that you go to Vrindavan. You go to Vrindavan and then serve there. So Loknath Goswami, then and there, he left for Vrindavan and he walked all the way and he started living in Vrindavan. He was going around, he was visiting all the forest, and he was still feeling separation for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He felt desire to meet Mahaprabhu again, and then he heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone to South India. So then Loknath Goswami from Vrindavan, he left for South India. As he went for South India, by that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had completed his South India tour and he went back to Puri. He went back to Puri, and then from Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then started coming back to Vrindavan. Now, when Loknath Goswami heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going back to Vrindavan, he also started walking back to Vrindavan. As he came back to Vrindavan, by the time he reached Vrindavan, he came to know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already left Vrindavan as well. And then that night he was feeling very sad in his heart, and he had planned, and then he found out that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone to Prayag on his way back to Jagannath Puri. So from Vrindavan, Mahaprabhu went back to Prayag, and next day he was planning that next day morning I will go to Prayag. And as he was contemplating, then in the night, same night in the dream, he had darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, you please stay in Vrindavan. You please stay in Vrindavan. You don't need to leave that place, right? Stay there, and and you will get association of other devotees. So then Loknath Goswami, he decided not to go there. And then here in while he was in Vrindavan, he got the association of Rup Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami, all the Shat Goswamis. He got their association, and he also got the association of Krishnadas Kaviraj. It is said that when Krishnadas Kaviraj wanted to write, when he was thinking of writing Chaitanya Charitamrita, he went to see Loknath Goswami, and Loknath Goswami gave him his blessings. But then he told him that please make sure you don't mention my name anywhere in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he was so much against name and fame. Yeah? And that leads to the next point, that he only had one disciple, Narottam Das Thakur. And Narottam Das Thakur also, Prabhuji Mataji, 17 times he had gone to Loknath Goswami to, with his request to accept him as his disciple. But every time he went, Loknath Goswami kept refusing him. And then Narottam Das Thakur, he was so much surrendered to his Guru Maharaj, that he was looking for ways to please him, ways to serve him, right? And then he went to the extent of he would follow Loknath Goswami, who wouldn't even stay under one tree. He followed Loknath Goswami, and then in the night he will go. So he will go and clean the place where Loknath Goswami was going for his morning, where he was going for the toilet. So he will go and clean that place. And then one day Loknath Goswami hid behind a tree, and he was trying to find out who is this person. And then he caught Narottam Das Thakur. He said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And then Narottam Das Thakur fell onto the feet of Loknath Goswami, and he said, please accept me as your disciple. So such is the greatness of who has a disciple like Narottam Das Thakur. And then Loknath Goswami, he accepted Narottam Das Thakur as his disciple. Now another pastime, Loknath Goswami, you would know the deities installed by Loknath Goswami, they are called Shri Radha Vinodji. Yeah. So once Loknath Goswami, he was walking in the 12 forests of Vrindavan. When he was walking there, he was desiring to do deity worship. He wanted to perform deity worship, and then he was thinking, how can I do deity worship? And then it is said that Lord Krishna came himself. Lord Krishna came himself and gave him a deity. Gave him the deity of Radha Vinodji, and he told him that you please worship them. And then Loknath Goswami, he got lost because he was in so much ecstasy. He did not know what had just happened. And as he was thinking, then the deities looked at him. And the deities spoke to him and they said, what are you doing? I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Please offer me something. And then Loknath Goswami, he got so ecstatic. He then cooked fresh rice and offered that rice on a banana leaf to his deity. And then the villagers came next day where he was there. And the villager said, we can make a bhajan kutir for you here. You can stay here and do your bhajan here. But Loknath Goswami said, no, I won't stay at one place. And then how did he carry his deities with him then? He arranged a bag. He arranged a cloth bag for his deity. And Prabhuji Mataji, he would carry those deities. He would wear that cloth bag in his neck. He would wear that cloth bag around his neck, and he will be carrying his deities with him all the time like this. So whenever he's going, he's walking. So deities are on his chest. So this is how he served Shri Radha Vinodji. And yeah, so this is how this is the parampara, if I can say, Prabhuji Mataji, we belong to. We should be, we should feel proud in the sense that we are so fortunate that we are able to hear these pastimes. We are able to discuss the pastimes. We are able to associate with the devotees, in this parampara of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Shri Krishna. Yeah, that we are able to read the writings. Yeah, I mean they're all Krishna Bhakt. I mean there is no this thing, but once again, the level of austerities they have performed, the examples they have set for us. Yeah. So it is very important that we follow these. And exactly as we discuss this chapter, so Shukdev Goswami, he is following that parampara. In that parampara, he's going to speak now. Very often we hear the term called dovetailing. Right? Let me take another few minutes and talk about this important subject. So there are three categories, if you like, from a surrender perspective. Yeah, how we say surrender, or we can say sort of vairagya, right? So normally we use the term dovetailing. So our understanding of dovetailing is whatever we do, whatever I like, dovetail into the service of the Supreme Lord. Yeah. But one thing missing here is the vairagya. Where is the detachment? Because I'm still doing what I like to do. Understand? I'm still doing what I like to do. For example, take the services, right? If somebody likes to cook, right? If somebody is doing kitchen service, and if he's asked to go and do the shoe rack service, he says, what do you think? Don't you know? I'm such a good cook, right? I'm such a good cook. My skill should be used in the kitchen rather than putting me into the shoe rack. Yeah. So there is no vairagya, there is no detachment here. Yeah, dovetailing it has its value. Whatever you are doing, you are using it into the service of Krishna. But there is no sense of detachment. There is still some attachment there. So the second thing is called, or the second aspect is called Yukta Vairagya. And Srila Rupa Goswami has described this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Yeah. So he's saying that anasaktasya vishayan, yeah, yatha arham upyunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. So three things he has mentioned in this verse. Let's try to focus on them. So first one he's saying is anasaktasya vishayan, right? So the vishaya, yeah, or the object. I mean, you can say, for example, you like to eat dal, right? You like to eat dal, but if dal is not appropriate to be offered at that particular point of time, to what extent you are prepared to remove your asakti? Yeah, you don't have, for example, you get a phone. You say, I've got this phone and I'm going to use it in the service of Krishna. But if you get a phone and you say 10 hours it is used in the service of Krishna and 2 hours you are using it for yourself, then that is not detachment. Mind you, very important point. Yeah. anasaktasya vishyan, right? And then yatha arham upayunjata. Actually, this is the first one. Sorry, I should have spoken. So yatha arham upayunjata. So the very first criteria is that can it be used in the devotional service? Can it be used in the service of the Supreme Lord? So all your anukulena krishnanu. Another place Rupa Goswami has described anukulena krishnanu. So as long as it can be used in the service of Krishna, right? It should not be like, oh, we take it for Krishna, but then afterwards I can enjoy it. Right? So solely 100%, right? Upayunjata, right? It can be used in the service of Krishna. That is the first criteria. The second criteria is that anasaktasya vishyan, that you don't have any personal attachment. Yeah. And then the nirbandha Krishna sambandhi, right? So always, like I said, 10 hours in the Krishna service, 2 hours in my personal service. No. So the only object, if let's say, for example, you have 20 items in your personal life that you like, but out of those 20, only 10 can be used in the service of Krishna, are we prepared to leave those 10 items? Yeah. If we are prepared, then yuktam vairagyam uchyate. That is why it is called a yukta vairagya, detachment. And that is very important for us to develop the next stage. Rupa Goswami has spoken this verse in the context of developing the bhava, developing the prema, feeling for the Supreme Lord. Sometimes we start crying. Rupa Goswami also says, when he's talking about pratibimba abhas, chaya abhas, so he's talking about people crying, but it is called bal chamatkar kari. It is considered to be like a bal chamatkar. Sometimes people start crying. They say, oh, Prabhuji, I'm crying when I'm doing this. No, you have to go back. So as a process, yeah. So first you have to measure up, right? Is it for your own interest, right? Sometimes you say, Prabhuji, I like to eat this thing very much, this and that. So just get the context. So yukta vairagya, yeah. And yukta is defined by Lord Krishna in 5th chapter. Lord Krishna says, yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti neshtiki ayukta kama karena phale sakto nibadhyate. So yukt, definition of yukt given by Lord Krishna. So Krishna is saying, yukta karma phalam tyaktva. People who are yukta, they don't expect the fruit of their karma, right? Shantim apnoti neshtiki. They get permanent peace. Neshtiki, shantim, peace. And ayukta kam karena, because they have a desire. You go into temple, you have a desire. Okay, I go there, I'll get to prasadam, I'll get to do this. But the real test is you go to temple for service, you don't get a prasadam. You go there, nobody says Hare Krishna to you. You go there, you don't get a proper place to park. You go there at a reception, nobody greets you. You get upset. Have we gone there for Krishna? See? So all these things we have to measure up. Where do we stand? Yeah. So so going back to that point, yukta vairagya. So let's just work on that. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya uchyate. And then the third stage is the Prema stage. Yeah, that is the topmost. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Ramananda Rai, he is telling him that sthavar jangam dekhe na dekhe tar murti sarvatra hoy nij isht dev safurti. Right? So the third stage is sthavar jangam dekhe na. Sthavar, right? Sthavar is something which doesn't move, jad. For example, this chair, or this glass, or this table, these are sthavar things which don't move. But if you see them, do you see hand of Krishna? If you see this table, do you see this table has been created from a tree? And the trees, Shukdev Goswami told Parikshit Maharaj in 2.1, second canto, first chapter, that trees, consider these trees to be hairs on the body of the Supreme Lord. Are we able to relate it back to the Supreme Lord? right? When you don't need a cloth, you just throw it on the table. Do you see that this cloth has come from this process, and that originally belonged to Supreme Lord? So sthavar jangam, and jangam is like the forest, jhadi, ghas fus, whatever you call it. Sthavar jangam dekhe na. You don't think of that, oh, this is jad, or this is this. No, dekhe tar murti. You see Supreme Lord's hand into that. You see that this belongs to the Supreme Lord, like that. Yeah, sarvatra, not just in your house now, not just in your room, not just in your temple area, not just in your house, not simply at Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. Sarvatra, hoy nij, everywhere. Sarvatra hoy nij, Isht Dev Sapurti. Everywhere you are Ishtadev, Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, everywhere you are seeing his hand. You see something, then you are able to straight away say, oh, it has come from Krishna. Yeah? So that is how you understand the greatness of the Supreme Lord. And that is where, when we talk about this process of creation, that is where you start linking to. This is the external energy of the Supreme Lord. Everything belongs to Krishna. Yeah? So that is the process, Prabhuji Mataji. We're trying to inculcate those feelings, those thoughts in our mind, right? No matter what you're following, remember this line, what Shukdev Goswami concluded. He told Parikshit Maharaj, Etavan eva yajatam iha. You're doing all of these kind of worships. That include Harinam Sankirtan also, that includes this also, right? But Nishreyasya Udaya. But your great fortune arises when? Bhagavati Achalo Bhavo. When you develop unflinching bhav, unflinching faith into the Supreme Lord. And how you develop that Supreme Lord? Yad Bhagavata Sangata. In the association of devotees, when you develop that bhav. So that is the mood we're trying to inculcate. So we'll stop now, Prabhuji Mataji. Hare Krishna Kavita Mataji, I will call you offline, Mataji, and we can discuss that question.
Okay, so, thank you.
Yes. So yeah, so we'll stop here. It's almost 7:30 now. Prabhuji Mataji, if you have any questions or comments, you can please unmute yourself. Okay, I take that please, once again, please forgive me, and I forgot to say the prayers, but yeah, please pray, please bless me that the whole purpose of these sessions is to glorify the Supreme Lord, and we all progress together on this mark. It is almost 7-year project. It is, I call it, this is the Yagna of Kali Yuga, right? Let's hope we all are healthy for next 7 years and we all progress on this path. Grantha Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki
Hare Krishna Prabhu ji. His Grace Vishwanath Das Prabhu ji ki jai.
Ila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna Prabhu ji Zanda.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Supriya Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Prabhu. Very nice to see you.